All right, so get ready because today we are taking a deep dive
Yeah.
into, well, wedding day jitters, I guess you could say, but with a bit of a twist.
Oh, wow.
It's kind of like watching a romantic comedy, but like where everything goes wrong.
Oh, that's great. I love that.
Yeah, so it's really
I'm
fascinating.
intrigued already.
Well, it's just amazing to me how this simple phrase, cold feet,
Yeah. Right.
can capture, such a universal feeling of being nervous
Yeah.
before making a really big decision.
It really is. I mean, you think about it, on your wedding day, it's supposed to be all happiness and excitement.
Yeah.
But, the reality is that it can actually be incredibly nerve-wracking.
Oh, absolutely. And this groom is like the perfect example of that.
Okay.
The scene opens with him practically begging his friend for help, saying like, I can't go through with it.
Oh.
He's sweating like a pig and just like totally losing it.
Wow. That's,
It's a pretty dramatic entrance.
It is a very dramatic entrance. And that expression, sweating like a pig, it just paints such a vivid picture, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Of his panic. And it's funny because pigs don't actually sweat very much at all.
Right.
So it's not really meant to be a literal description, is it?
No.
It's more about just, showing how strong his nerves are, how intense they are.
And here's the thing that I find so interesting.
Okay.
Just a month ago, this guy was like all about settling down and escaping the bachelor life.
Really?
He was dreaming of, white picket fences and having family dinners.
Wow. So what happened?
It's a good question.
Yeah.
So that's where I think things get really interesting.
Okay.
Because the whole idea of settling down, I mean, it's so loaded
Right.
with cultural baggage.
Yeah.
It kind of implies that you have to leave behind this life of freedom and spontaneity.
Yeah.
And you trade it all in for this more, structured domestic existence.
Yeah.
And for a lot of people, that can be a really, really daunting thought,
Absolutely.
especially if you picture like the stereotypical bachelor pad. You know what I mean?
Yes.
The one with pizza boxes piled up everywhere and video games all over the place.
Oh, yeah.
It's like society wants men to just like instantly go from that to like
Okay.
perfectly manicured lawns and matching Tupperware.
Yeah, just overnight.
Yeah, exactly.
It's quite a leap.
It's that huge contrast, I think,
Yeah.
that makes the idea of settling down seem like this
Yeah.
radical change in who you are.
I think so.
And I think that's probably part of what's feeding into this groom's anxiety.
Makes sense.
He's not just worried about the wedding itself.
Okay.
He's worried about losing a part of himself.
Yeah.
Thankfully, he has his friend there
Oh, good.
to kind of, talk some sense into him.
Okay.
His friend reminds him that you can't just leave your bride at the altar.
Right.
I mean, can you imagine?
Yeah.
What a nightmare
That would be awful
for everyone involved.
for everyone involved.
Yeah. It's like the ultimate betrayal.
It is in our culture, I think.
Yeah.
Being left at the altar is like one of the worst things you can do. It's
Yeah.
not just, canceling the party.
Yeah.
It's like public humiliation. It's like the shattering of someone's dreams.
It's awful.
Yeah. So you can imagine the pressure that this groom is feeling.
Yeah. And the friend doesn't really hold back either.
Oh, really?
He tells him to cut the crap.
Wow.
And remember, why he fell in love with his bride in the first place?
Yeah.
I just love how blunt he is.
I do too.
You can really tell that they're close friends.
It sounds like
Like
it.
they have a strong bond.
Yeah.
I mean, that phrase, cut the crack,
Right.
is such a casual way of saying, be honest with yourself.
It really is. Yeah. It's super informal. And I
Yeah.
think it shows that their friendship is, strong enough
Right.
to be able to handle some tough love.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Okay, I'm ready for the next bit.
Okay, let's do it. Yeah.
Let's do it.
And it's that honesty, that really seems to get through to the groom.
Yeah.
He realizes that, this is just, classic cold feet.
It's just like that moment right before you jump into a cold pool.
Yeah.
You'll be fine once you're actually in the water.
Right.
But that initial shock, it just makes you hesitate for a second.
Yeah.
And I think that's what getting cold feet is really all about. Is
Yeah.
that sudden wave of doubt
Right.
that can just kind of wash over you before you make any big decision.
It's interesting to me that the groom, instantly calms down
Right.
once his friend reassures him.
Yeah.
It's like all that anxiety was just bubbling under the surface,
Yeah.
just waiting for, a way to be released.
I think that speaks to just how powerful perspective can be.
Uh-huh.
Sometimes we get so caught up in our own thoughts
Yeah.
that we kind of lose sight of the bigger picture.
You sure?
And I think having someone else there to remind us, you
Yeah.
know, what our motivations really or what we want
Right.
can be like incredibly grounding.
Yeah, totally. And then the friend's last line, you know,
Okay.
you had me going there for a minute.
Yeah.
It just injects a little bit of humor
It does.
into the situation.
Yeah.
It's like he's acknowledging how absurd the whole thing was.
It's a great line.
It is. It really is.
And you know, that phrase is so versatile.
It is.
Like, imagine someone tells you they're moving to another country,
Right.
and then they're like, just kidding, you
Yeah.
can totally use it then.
Exactly.
It perfectly captures that feeling of being tricked or surprised for
Yeah.
a moment.
So
Yeah.
this whole dialogue got me thinking,
Okay.
have you ever gotten cold feet before a big decision?
Oh, absolutely.
It doesn't even have to be like a wedding or anything, like
Right.
maybe a job interview or even
Eh.
sending an important email.
Oh, yeah, all the time.
Yeah.
I think it's something that we all experience,
Yeah.
that feeling of doubt and uncertainty.
Right.
Like right before you're about to do something big. And, you know, I think those feelings are completely normal.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that you're making the wrong choice.
Yeah.
It just means that you're human.
It's comforting to know that even on a day that's supposed to be so joyful,
Right.
like your wedding day,
Yeah,
it's okay to have a moment of like, what am I doing?
totally. I think acknowledging those feelings
Well,
instead of trying to ignore them
Right.
can be really empowering.
Interesting.
It lets you move forward with more self-awareness
Okay.
and more intention.
I like that. So let's talk about some strategies.
Okay.
How can we deal with those cold feet moments
Yeah.
and make tough decisions with confidence?
Well, I think one thing that can be helpful is to try to separate
Okay.
the fear from the facts.
Okay.
Like, are your doubts based on actual concerns?
Yeah.
Or are they just based on like anxiety and what ifs?
That makes sense. It's like that saying,
Yeah.
feel the fear and do it anyway.
Exactly.
Sometimes you just have to acknowledge the fear
Right.
and then take the leap.
Yeah. And another strategy I think that can be useful is to really focus on the benefits.
Okay.
Like, what are you hoping to gain from this experience?
Right.
What are the good things that you're working towards?
And sometimes it can be helpful to talk it out with someone,
That's sure.
like a friend or a family member,
Absolutely.
like the groom in the dialogue.
Yeah.
Sometimes just voicing your concerns can help you see things more clearly.
Yeah. Having a fresh perspective can be so valuable.
Yeah.
Sometimes we just get so stuck in our own heads that we can't see the big picture.
And, of course, it's super important to take care of yourself,
Oh, yeah.
especially when you're making a big decision.
Absolutely.
Make sure you're getting enough sleep, eating well,
Yeah.
doing things that help you manage stress.
You can't make good decisions when you're exhausted.
Right.
Taking care of your mental and physical well-being
Yeah.
helps you be more resilient.
Yeah, it's all about remembering that making these big decisions,
Mm-hmm.
while they can be scary,
Yeah.
it's also a sign of growth.
Right.
It means you're taking control of your life
Yeah,
and shaping your own future.
exactly. And even if things don't go exactly according to plan,
Okay.
you know, even if there are some bumps along the way, those experiences are valuable too.
Yeah.
They teach us, they challenge us,
Uh,
and they ultimately shape who we become.
Before we move on, I wanted to mention something that's been on my mind
Okay.
throughout this dialogue.
Yeah.
There's this assumption that settling down is this big, scary change,
Right.
especially for men.
I see what you mean.
Like, why is it automatically assumed
Yeah.
that settling down means you have to give up your freedom and fun?
Yeah, good question.
Why can't it be about building a life with someone you love
Yeah.
while still being your own person
Right.
and doing the things you're passionate about?
I think it's time that we re-examine these assumptions
Yeah.
and challenge this idea that settling down has to look the same for everyone.
Exactly. Because at the end of the day, whether you're single, married, or somewhere in between,
Right.
what matters most is finding happiness and fulfillment in a
Yeah.
way that feels right for you.
Couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
That's a great point.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, it's funny how we started this whole conversation talking about a groom freaking out about his wedding,
Right.
but we've ended up talking about so much more than just wedding day jitters.
It's true. I mean, it's a really good example of how language,
Yeah.
even something as simple as, you know, an idiom like cold feet,
Right.
can really open up these deeper conversations about, you know, culture and psychology and things like that.
We talked about, the pressure to settle down,
Yeah.
the fear of losing your freedom,
Right.
and how important it is to make choices that feel right for you.
Absolutely. And we also talked about the power of perspective, the importance of self-care,
Right.
and the idea that even when things go wrong,
Yeah,
you can still learn something from the experience.
exactly. So
Yeah.
before we wrap things up, I
I'm-
want to leave our listeners with one final thought.
Okay, I'm ready.
We've been talking a lot about, the individual experience of cold feet.
Right.
But I'm kind of curious about how this idea
Yeah.
might be seen differently in other cultures.
That's a really interesting question.
Do you think that some cultures might, encourage people to just push through those doubts, while others might see it as a sign to, really carefully consider all your options?
I think that's totally possible.
And how do you think cultural expectations around marriage and family
Right.
and individual freedom,
Yeah.
how do you think all of that plays into it?
Yeah. That's a lot to unpack.
It is. It really is.
But I think it's worth exploring those nuances.
For sure. It just reminds us that even something as personal as,
Yeah.
pre-decision anxiety
hmm
can be influenced by so many different things.
By a lot of different factors. Absolutely.
Well, that's all the time we have for today.
Okay.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive
Yeah. Thanks for having me.
into the world of wedding day jitters
Of course.
and the always relatable feeling of getting cold feet.
It's something we can all relate to.
We hope you learned something new
Yeah, me too.
and maybe even picked up a few tips
Yeah, some strategies.
for navigating those moments of doubt.
Yeah, exactly.
So remember, the next time you feel those cold feet creeping in,
Oh, yeah.
don't panic.
Right.
Just take a deep breath.
Take a deep breath.
Trust your gut.
Trust your gut.
And remember, it's all part of the journey.
It really is. You got this.
All right, that's it for today.
Yeah.
We'll see you next time.
Bye, everyone.